I welcome you all to this live session of Comp-Tutors. So as we all know that IBPS PO prelims is going to be over very soon with its last shift scheduled tomorrow, that is at 27th. The big question is, have you all started preparing for mains examination? क्या आप सब लोग मेंस की तैयारी कर रहे हैं या आप इंतज़ार कर रहे हैं कि आपका स्कोर कार्ड या कट ऑफ लिस्ट बाहर आए? I don't think so you should be waiting for the scorecard. Why? Because you are left with just hardly 25 days, and these 25 days are very crucial for your preparation for mains examination. You should plan each and every day according to your studies. What you do now will reflect upon your future. And coming to the mains examination, in IBPS PO mains examination, there is a section called Computer Awareness or Computer Knowledge. And this section will have 20 questions and you'll be having 10 minutes. Now it's not just about 20 questions in 10 minutes. The main point is preparation. आप कैसे तैयारी करेंगे computers की? Computers is a very huge subject. It is a vast subject. In fact, इसके जो topics होते हैं वो भी अपने आप में एक subject हैं. Now what is important is you need to draw a line. You need to draw a line and get to know that what all topics are important and relevant with your studies for banking examination. And that is how you should plan your studies from today onwards. And to help you with this, on Bankers Adda, we have already uploaded our 25 days study plan for IBPS PO mains. Our mods will give you the link in the comment section. So now coming to our topic of today is Dbms, Database Management System. Database Management System. In banking examinations, Dbms is asked of basic level, so you need not go deep or further into it. आपको कुछ basic terms की knowledge होना ज़रूरी है. तो आगे बढ़ने से पहले let us start with the basic terminology of what these terms mean individually. In terms का individually क्या मतलब है? What do you understand by database? And then what do you understand by management? And what do you understand by a system? A database is nothing but a collection of data or records. And then to manage that records, it means by upkeeping those records and for its efficient retrieval, then we need a system. What is a system? You might have also heard another term, that is a computer system. What is meant by a computer system or the term system? A system is nothing but when two or more components work together and they are connected logically in an environment. They might be performing different functions, but they pertain or they perceive a common goal. That is a system. So the question is, why do we need database management system? Let me explain to you with a common example. For example, you have a huge room and you are fond of books. And day by day your collection of books increases. Now you have just stacked your books in that room, you are not organizing them. And one day, your friend pays you a visit and he or she asks you for a particular book. You say, okay, just a minute, I'll be back. You go to your room and you find it very difficult to search a particular book. Why was that so? That was because you never organized anything. Those books, they represent the data. And when you organize them, for example, with the help of a library management system, you can efficiently retrieve a record. That means you can efficiently find a book from your system. That is how database management system or DBMS works. So let's start with this topic and get to know some more details and some more terms related to DBMS. First, we'll start with what are some advantages of DBMS over फाइल मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम. हाँ, DBMS से पहले फाइल मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम था तो ऑब्वियसली उसके कुछ डिसएडवांटेजेस थे जिनको ओवरकम करने के लिए हमारे पास DBMS आया. The first advantage of DBMS over file management system is controlled over redundancy and inconsistency. What is meant by data redundancy? When there is a happening of duplication of records, then it is called a data redundancy. And with DBMS, we can make some integrity constraints that can ensure that there is a control over data redundancy. That means we do not have duplication of records or data. And if there will be no duplication of data, that means our data will be consistent. Hence, we can have a control over inconsistency. Next, we have data integrity. Data integrity implies to accuracy, and DBMS manages data integrity through a acid test. Acid. You can have a question in your examination in this way, like what does acid test means or what does acid test stands for? Then the answer will be atomicity, consistency, integrity, and durability. So DBMS manages data integrity with the help of this acid test. Now our next topic in this advantages is backup and recovery. Yes, DBMS provides subsystems which are already in there for backup and recovery procedure. In file management system, there was an issue that they could not use efficient ways for backup and recovery. They have to keep in mind over and over again. But with DBMS, it is an easy process. Then we have control over concurrency. Now, what is control over concurrency? Well, let us consider an example. Suppose there is a record or a file and you and your friend, or I can say two users, want to perform an update operation at the same time. There are high chances that in file management system, they might override each other's updation. That is very much controlled in DBMS. That is how it provides control over concurrency. Then we have data independence. Data independence means that in most DBMS models, the database is different from the programming language. So if the programmer wishes to change the structure of the DBMS or the database, he need not do anything with the programming language. That is how DBMS provides data independence. So these all were some advantages that DBMS has over the file management system. Next, we have the topic some types of database models. Types of database models. I'll be discussing 4 types with you in a very brief fashion. The first we have is the earliest type that came into existence, the hierarchical model. Now what happens in hierarchical model is, in hierarchical model, everything is in a form of a binary tree. Where the shapes are represented in a relation of parent and child records. To explain this in an easier way, I'll show you with the help of a diagram. Let us consider a binary tree where we will have these nodes, and each parent has 2 children. Now this is a hypothetical example. In binary tree there is a limitation. The limitation is that a child can only have one parent node. A child cannot have multiple parents, and to overcome this limitation we came up with the network model. In network model, a child could have multiple parents, that is, it was not restricted to hierarchy or lattice. So here, if I consider an example, this node 5 can have multiple parents, and here the data was represented in type of graphs where the links were called the arcs. The next model that we have is Dbms, that is Relational Database Model. Relational database model is the most easy and is the most used model today. You can see a table over here. This table is an efficient example of the relational database model. In relational database model, everything was organized in form of tables. This is called a row and this is called a column. Next database model that we have is the object-oriented database model. So in object-oriented database model, everything was organized with the concept of OOPS, that is object-oriented programming. Here the database was integrated with the programming language. That means if the programmer wishes to change the model of the database, he has to make some changes in the programming language as well. So these were all the types of DBMS models. Next we'll talk about some languages that are used with the relational database models. Database languages. Before starting with the database languages, let me explain a term to you. SQL. What is SQL? SQL is an abbreviation for Structured Query Language. Structured query language is used for efficient retrieval manipulation of database in an RDBMS. That was our relational database model. Now we'll be discussing 3 types of languages in brief. The first we have is DDL, or should I say Data Definition Language. Data Definition Language. As the name specifies itself, DDL include those commands that pertain to defining the data, which can be the create command, or the rename command. The create and rename, as the name tells you, they are used to create a database or to rename the database. They define an action. The next we have is data manipulation language, that is DML. Now in data manipulation language, there are those commands that do not define any action, but they manipulate the existing records. For example, the select command of SQL or the delete command. Now after DML, we have another set, that is data control language. Data control language, DCL. In data control language, we perform actions such as granting or revoking, which pertain to controlling the existing database. These are some brief discussions about the language, and this much is required for your banking examination. You need not go into the further details. Let us move on to our next topic. Now in our next topic, we'll see some terms that are associated with the basic knowledge of Dbms. What are those terms? The first term is a table. You can see over here, I have given you an example, two examples of table in fact. This represents a table. In a relational database model, a table is also known as relation. Next we have another term, that is field. What is a field? A field is a column in the table. You can see this column. This is a hypothetical example. Let us see, we have an employee table over here, and the next we have a department table. So in this employee table, I have taken 4 columns: employee reference number, employee ID, employee name and department. Similarly, in department table, I have again taken 4 columns: department number, employee ID, employee reference number and department name. So this particular section, employee reference number or employee ID, it is collectively a column. Then we have a record or a row. Now a record in a table means this complete record, that is, if you see here, employee reference number is AX102105. This complete term here is a record or a row. Remember, this is also known as a tuple. The next term that we have is a column. We have already told you a column is a vertical entity. Then we have database keys. This is important. Keys. There are many keys and I'll be briefly discussing primary key, candidate key, foreign key, and super key. And we'll be discussing these keys with the help of that table. Let's come to our first type of key, that is primary key. What is a primary key? The technical definition is a primary key uniquely identifies a record in a table. Coming over to our table, let's discuss first the employee table. You can clearly see here there is employee ID and I have defined this employee ID as a primary key. Why is that so? Every value that this column will hold will be unique in itself. There will be no repetition. So this column or this value will define a record in a table. इस column में जो भी values होंगी वो सब unique होंगी, and this is a very important property of a primary key, that a primary key can not be null and it has to be unique. Yes, आप primary key में कोई भी null entry नहीं कर सकते. Obviously, if you will do a null entry in a primary key, how will it uniquely identify every record? The next key we have is candidate key. Candidate key are those key or that key which is a prospective candidate for becoming a primary key. Like in this table, I have employee ID. It is the primary key for this table, but for example, if I add another field or column which also uniquely identifies the data, then that will be said as the candidate key. Before discussing foreign key, I'll tell you what is super key. Super key is the set, is the complete set of keys that can uniquely identify the records, and primary key, the candidate key is a subset of that domain. If, for example, suppose we have two more columns that uniquely identify the record, that have these properties of not null and unique, then all these collectively will be the super key. Note that why department is not a primary key, why can't I make it a primary key? That is because department can have repetitive values. It cannot be a primary key. It cannot uniquely identify any record in the table. Then we have foreign key. Foreign key is the primary key of another table in a table. To understand this, we have to consider both of these tables together. This is a department table, and in our department table, employee reference number, it is the primary key, and in our employee table, employee ID is the primary key. You can see that I have also added employee ID over here. So employee ID is the primary key of the employee table. So employee ID is the foreign key in department table. Foreign key वो की होती है जो दूसरी टेबल की प्राइमरी की होती है. तो इस टेबल में हमारा एम्प्लॉय रेफरल नंबर ये प्राइमरी की है. दैट इज वाई एम्प्लॉय आईडी हमारी फॉरेन की होगी एम्प्लॉय टेबल से. सिमिलरली इसमें एम्प्लॉय आईडी प्राइमरी की है तो एम्प्लॉय रेफरल नंबर फॉरेन की होगी डिपार्टमेंट टेबल से. So students, these were some important keys that you needed to know for DBMS. The next term that I will discuss with you is integrity constraints. What is meant by integrity constraints? See, just now I mentioned two terms, not null and unique. They are integrity constraints. कॉन्स्ट्रेंट्स का मतलब वो होता है जो अगर हम अपने टेबल पे अप्लाई कर दें तो वो वैल्यू, वो सर्टेन वैल्यू टेबल को मीट करनी पड़ेगी until and unless वो रिकॉर्ड रजिस्टर नहीं करेगा. दैट इज हाउ इंटीग्रिटी कॉन्स्ट्रेंट वर्क. इफ आई अप्लाई नॉट नल इंटीग्रिटी कॉन्स्ट्रेंट टू अ फील्ड, that field cannot be null. It has to have some value. So students, this was the session of Comp-Tutors on DBMS. And next, we'll be having a session of Anshul ma'am, so stay tuned. And thank you and keep watching Adda 247.